Beep, 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 beep. Welcome to the court of the Edeonite Jester. Hello. What have we got for you today? Well, now, become a warrior teacher. You're going to see adverts going up soon for the next start in July, which is for the UK and Europe and anybody in the right time zone. So it's going to start up. You'll see them pop up soon. So come and join the team and become part of this fantastic movement. It's so good. Watching what they do, the things they get up to. They're all over the place. Stickering, going to meetings, rabble-rousing teachers, rabble-rousing parents to get things done. It's amazing. It's amazing what they're doing. So please do come along and join the team. Anyway, enough's enough of my wittering. Let's witter some more about the fantastic man who is Simon Edge. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with Simon Edge, Simon's on Twitter. He's a great player in the game. And he wrote a marvellous satirical book called The End of the World is Flat, which if you haven't read, I suggest that you do. Now, links in the doobries to Simon's blog that I'm going to go through today, and also to an altercation he's had with some miscreant from the LGBT Foundation, as well as to the book itself, if you would like to purchase it. So I do recommend that you do. It's a great book. Thank you very much for that, Simon. And thank you very much for this blog and also your continued fight against this lunacy. So let's dig in, shall we, and see what he's got to say. It's actually on unheard.com, and it's called Pride is No Place for Homosexuals. And it's wound up the LGBT Foundation head loon, right? Which you can also have a look at. Well, let's see if I can find it in a minute. We'll have a look. Right, so the gay community has better things to do. Pride is no place for homosexuals. How are you spending Pride Month? Asks Simon. I myself am gearing up to run the second annual Viner Award. This is fantastic. Now, the Viner Award is like, it's like, you know, the Razzies in the Oscars, where they pick a film that's so bad and give an award to it. Well, Catwoman got one, didn't it? And all that, you know, Halle Berry went to get it. It's all a bit of an industry joke. So this is a similar sort of thing, but on a very much smaller scale so far. But I think it should become a bigger thing, called the Viner Award, whereby Simon will, give you a list of companies that are all shite and full of pride nonsense and LGBTQ plus hands, knees and bumps a daisy virtue signaling, and you can pick which one's the worst, and then we highlight who was the worst company. Now this works, this stuff. You might joke about this, but Simon's got his finger on the button, so to speak. And it works, right? Look at what's happened to Target. They've had to remove everything now. It's all gone because they made such a mistake. Look at Bud Light. So this does happen. The shaming works. So Simon goes on to say he's having the Vine Awards, and he calls it a kind of golden raspberry for corporate wokery. It's awarded via a public Twitter poll to the company or institution that most beclowns itself in the season of alphabet sanctimony, which is Pride. Last year's contenders included the bank Halifax, which told customers to close their accounts if they disagreed with staff being asked to wear pronoun badges. And the Natural History Museum, which decided it was progressive to liken homosexuals to self-cloning lizards. Can you imagine? More than one of me. Oh, the horror. The winner, though, was Nottingham City Council, which celebrated Pride by banning the lesbian activist Julie Bindel from giving a talk on violence against women. Her crime, entirely unrelated to her talk, being her belief that humans can't change sex. Setting up the award, it's named after Guardian editor Kath Viner, who knows a thing or two about trashing a treasured brand by pandering to gender extremists, was my way of giving vent to the frustration that many lesbians and gay men of the old-fashioned sort feel, the ones with same-sex attraction, feel at this time of year. Pride used to be a riot, an opportunity to commemorate our achievements since the Stonewall Inn uprising and shout about the equalities we still had to fight for. Now it's a bloated month of pink-washed flummery. There's an underused word, folks. Flummery. Of reimagined company logos, empty sloganeering and corporate parade float sponsorships. And it's a drag. It is a drag. You stand there on the side of the street for 3.5 hours to watch some pretty piss poor bloody parade floats to go by with prancing tarts in underpants and, it's an absolute nauseating nonsense now. The only fighting lesbian and gays do these days is amongst ourselves. Some people don't think the tea belong with the LGB. Get over it. Well, I don't, and he doesn't either. If only we could. Those of us who insist that the trans movement can be homophobic because it encourages young people to think they were born in the wrong sex if they are gay or lesbian, have found ourselves marginalised. Told by Pride organisers that we'll be thrown out in the name of inclusion. Right? In the name of inclusion. Obviously, if we dare show up to the season's events, we'll have little option but to snark from the sidelines if we haven't already been blocked by them on Twitter. When I worked on the London paper Capital Gay in the 90s, a colleague used to call Pride all our birthdays and Christmases rolled into one. I've heard that before. We used to say it. We used to say, here it comes, Gay Christmas. Nobody says it now. Nobody. Even the ones that won't speak because they're frightened. Nobody says it. It's just a boondoggle for critical social justice nutters. Back then, it was one day of the year, not an entire season. I have in front of me the latest edition, the last edition I edited of that paper from June 1995, which reported on a march of 75,000 lesbian and gay men through central London, followed by a party with a record turnout of 200,000 people at Victoria Park. That was 95. In the previous year, we had achieved the first legislative victory on our path to legal equality when MPs had reduced the age of consent for gay men from 21 to 18. But politicians had voted against reducing it to 16. In line with the heterosexual age of consent, reinforcing our status as second-class citizens in the eyes of the law. Getting together in a park was a way of feeling that for one day only, we had just as much right as anyone else to be ourselves in the capital. Nowadays, we no longer need that kind of refuge because life no longer treats us so cruelly. That's why today's Pride, to me, feels so overblown and excessive. Well said, Simon. On one level, of course, I'm old and jaded, which may explain my cultural cringe at the BBC's new Boy Meets Boy reality show, I Kissed a Boy. To me, all that hand-flapping and yes, Queen campery harks uncomfortably back to the 70s model of male homosexuality on TV as personified by Larry Grayson and John Inman. Oh boy, you and I have the same mindset, I feel, Simon. Not for the first time, I noticed the irony of the generation that believes it is reinventing gender, taking such ready refuge in regressive stereotypes. We are literally back to that. Twats. Meanwhile, the fashion world has decided to portray our lives as a circus freak show. Consider Calvin Klein's last Pride campaign, which featured a bearded, hairy-chested, plus-sized female model wearing a sports bra over the breast that she hasn't yet got round to removing. In another age, Calvin Klein put a topless Mark Wahlberg on giant billboards around the world, and gay men convinced ourselves we too could be Marky Mark if we bought Y-fronts. He was so hot in his day. He still is, actually. How did we get here? A decade ago, it wasn't obvious that the future of Pride should be, what it should be. The wide array of discriminatory laws had been dismantled, culminating with the legislation of same-sex marriage. We had achieved everything we'd asked for, and prejudice seemed to fall away too. Now, surely, we just had to get on with our lives. At the time, I had a naive idea that we could progress on South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation model. Having achieved equality, we could afford to be magnanimous about those who had opposed us along the way. Homophobia had been so widespread that there was no point in bearing grudges over past slights. We simply had to embrace the chance to play the full role in civil society that had previously been denied us. And having won our own campaigns, perhaps we could now turn our attention abroad to help stop young Iranian gay men being hanged, or thrown off rooftops by the state, or the corrective rape of lesbians in Cameroon and elsewhere. Maybe also try to help lesbian and gay communities shrug off UK-inherited anti-gay laws in many Commonwealth countries. But charities need problems to address, lobbyists need grievances, media publishers need to grow their demographic. In 2015, the lobby group Stonewall, which had surpassed even its own expectations in its effectiveness as campaigning, extended its remit to campaign on trans issues as well as LGBT ones. This was the development that Simon satirises in his novel The End of the World is Flat, as he says here, when a charity set up to correct minor map-making anomalies embarks on a campaign of fully fledged flat earthery. Until that point, the trans movement had been entirely separate, both culturally and politically. As a gay journalist reporting on political developments over 2 decades, I never met any trans campaigners. But after the passing of the Gender Recognition Act 2004, a merger of the two movements took place, and the Rainbow establishment set about pretending that the two camps had already been one. This new movement, a cuckoo in the nest of the campaign for lesbian and gay rights, suddenly had a whole menu full of demands and an agenda that would end up trying to redefine language, reorganise public toilets and changing rooms, kibosh women's sport and take control of HR departments, and its most baleful, it would try to root out wrong-thinking heretics, such as the think tank consultant Meyer Forstater, and others from every walk of life. This year, however, it feels like the tide is turning. And Simon then gives us a great list of stuff to be positive about, even though I think that positivity must be taken cautiously, okay? Because this is a hydra, it's a beast with many heads, and it will change because these people are, in many cases, they have borderline personality disorder. They're not very well. They're actually unable to cope with the realities of life, or they live their life in denial and cognitive dissonance. They will do whatever it takes to make themselves feel comfortable because they don't want to be removed from the bubble. They're frightened of life, most of them. Yeah, don't like change, so they're frightened of life, really. You know, interesting, isn't it? We like Simon. He's a bloody gem. Keep going, Simon. Thank you so much for this. And I hope that people will read Simon's book, which I recommend very heartily. The End of the World is Flat. You go well. It's great to talk to you. Thank you.